Pretty cool for sure.
Hey, can you hear my dog snoring?
A little bit.
No.
I can't tell with this new microphone. Look, Mark got me a little something because apparently my tutorial audio quality was shite. But now this mic might be too good. I don't know.
It sounds good.
Yeah.
Cool. Coolio. Hello, Ethan. Welcome. Hey, Dorian. How you doing, dude? I wasn't sure if you'd be on today.
Yeah, I'm good. Back to normal.
Happy to hear it. Happy to hear it. Hi, Peter. Welcome back. Welcome back. Let me pull up the participants list. Is it 11? Yes, it is. Very good time. So let's see who we've got on the call today. All right. So it looks like Ethan. I think it's Ethan's first time here. Yes.
Yep.
All right. Right on. And where are you from, Ethan?
New Jersey.
New Jersey. Okay. Welcome. Welcome. Did you just get access this last week?
Like maybe 2 weeks ago or something, and I'm just starting to dabble a little bit, but yeah, excited, man.
Cool. Yeah. If you have any questions come up or anything that you saw, let us know. We can tackle on today's call.
Cool. Thank you.
Alex Karpinski, how you doing? Happy to have you here. Looks like we've got Kevin. Kevin did an awesome live stream last night of his first time working. What were you doing again? Something with graph?
Oh, I was using a GraphQL API with Bildr.
Yeah, I was like, you can do that? What? And you made it look so easy. It was awesome. So I think Kevin seems like he's going to be a really great resource for people who are wanting to learn how to do API integrations. He's an awesome teacher. So if he does any more Twitches and I see them, I will share it with y'all in the community so that we can all learn something.
I missed that one. Can you drop a link to that in the chat, Kevin? I want to see that GraphQL one. Cool, thank you.
All right. So let's see. Oh, the names keep switching on me. So we've got two Ethans in here. So Ethan Cohen, welcome. Let's see, Jackson, Lance, welcome back, Lance, and Mariana as well. She's been here before. And then we've got Paul, Peter, who's come several times too, and then Ray Barnes, who I believe is a new user from this last round. And then we've got Ryan, Tim, Tom, and Javier. So welcome everyone to Bildr Hour. Happy Friday. It is a good day. So today is really exciting for me because we are going to get a sneak peek into Michael Gill's mind, the inner workings of Michael's mind. So I'm very, very excited. He's going to show us Canoe, which is his new app. And so what we'll do is we'll start off with that, and then we'll do showcase, check out Canoe, and then we'll just kind of open it up. We'll give you guys some updates for what we're working on in Bildr, what you can expect in the next update. And then since I know a lot of you are new, we'll open up the floor. So if you guys have any questions, or you need help on a good place to start, we can always go through that. So Kevin, thank you for sharing the stream that you did last night. So I think we'll get started and then everybody can just trickle in. Does that sound good? Yes. Okay. All right. So I'm Cora. If you're new, I'm Cora. I guess I don't really know if I do one thing specifically. I'm kind of like a jack of all trades for Bildr. So you might see me if you need support. Mark is our founder. Drew is probably one of our most serendipitous hires who we just fell in love with his work and somehow managed to finagle him onto the team. And Drew is awesome. He is also probably the one who #1 handles most of the community posts or questions on the complicated technical stuff that I don't know how to answer. So Drew is the brains behind that. And then we've got Dorian, who is like, I always consider him our secret weapon because he's the most humble person of all. You would never even know it, but he's like super brilliant and can figure out the most like incredible ways of like solving problems that are not like super easy things to solve. So so that's Dorian. So that's, I think, everyone who we have from like the team here. And then yeah, so I guess let's get started. So Mark, I think you might need to do something special for Michael to be able to show his screen when he's ready. So Michael Gill has recently started working in Bildr, and he's building a calendar app that I am super excited about. It's like totally up my alley. It's called Canoe. He's going to tell us a little bit more about it. But before we get started, Michael, can you tell us a little bit about like your background in building, kind of like what your path has been to where you are now?
Sure, absolutely. So I started out as a web developer many years ago. I was actually doing computer animation. I used to do 3D animation. That's what I went to school for, and just needed to build my own site to show off some of the stuff I was building. And so I learned how to do HTML and CSS on Google. And then from there, I wanted to add more functionality and ended up learning other languages, spent a lot of time in PHP for years. I started a dev agency. So we used to build software for clients and companies, and did that for about 13 years. And then took a role as a CTO for a private equity venture. And about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I started coming across like some of Brahm's work with the no code MVP, and was really intrigued by like how fast you could get a quick and dirty MVP out there and just ship something and get validation, and started learning about kind of the lean startup and different types of models, and got really intrigued. And then I fell into the no code space from there, like headfirst, and really haven't looked back too much since. It's just a really incredible, it's an incredible community. As you guys know, the people in it are just amazing and super helpful, but it's been really nice too, to like find a different speed of shipping things and launching, and starting with an audience first and getting validation on your ideas and all that. So that's kind of how I got to where I am today. I love playing with different tools and seeing how far I could take them, because I do have the sort of developer background. I'm always curious, like, okay, how do I do the things that aren't like obvious and in the menu, just right in front of your face? And so Bildr is the best option I've found for that. I keep throwing little tests and challenges at Mark to see like, it's not going to do this. And he's like, yep, there's a way. Here's how you do it. So absolutely love that.
It's been really helpful for us because you've been finding bugs that one cannot find unless you're actually like making something, you know what I mean? You're like making something complex. So yeah, I've been really appreciate that. So you're like self-taught in all the stuff that you've done and you've learned.
Yes, self-taught. I learned most of it under the gun because I promised a client I could have something done for them, and I had no clue how to do it. So I had to scurry and figure it out.
Oh, that's too real. That's too real.
Yeah.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about Canoe. Like where did this idea come from, and what it is?
Sure. So I went through a pretty long stretch of burnout. I know a lot of people do these days. It's a pretty common thing, especially in the type of community and field that we're in. And so I kind of was looking at my processes and figuring out what are the challenges to my creative process, and like what's really getting in my way. And a lot of the obstacles, or even just like the things that we all have strengths and weaknesses, the things that accentuated my weaknesses had to do with my calendar. It was overcommitting to things, like saying, yeah, sure, I want to do it because I want to either I want to help somebody or I don't want to let them down or whatever. I want to take an opportunity. And then I get to the day when that thing is scheduled and it's like, I really need to get this project done, or I really should have been doing something else, and just having issues prioritizing my time. And then I also realized that there were different parts of the day where I was like super creative and productive. And then there was other parts of the day where I just had no motivation at all to get anything done. And just the way that my mind sort of works, I do better in like sprints of time. So if I know I'm sitting down to do a certain type of work, I can do like a lot of that type of work in batch, and then I kind of get bored or get distracted and I've got to move on to something else. So that was the original inspiration for this. I had talked to a few people about this concept and realized that I wasn't unique, that a lot of people were feeling same types of things around their calendar and around their day. And so that's how I came up with the idea for this. So the concept of Canoe is you design your day in these segments of time that are based on the way you want your day to flow. And I say time because it's still a calendar. Time is the unifier. It's the universal measurement that we all end up living by. But I noticed that I wanted an opportunity to not just look at my calendar as chunks of time, but I wanted to look at them as blocks of creativity, mental energy, emotional energy, like all these different measurements that are unique to each person. And I wanted to build a way to say, okay, I'm most creative during this part of the day, or these high energy meetings where I've got to be on video and smiling and waving at everybody. Like I can't do that first thing in the morning. That's got to be in the afternoon. Like ways to cater to your unique flow. So that's how I came up with this idea.
It's like hacking oneself and like energy. It's yeah.
So should I just kind of jump into what I'm building and how I've laid it out?
Yeah, for sure. And if anyone has questions like about, Michael's inspiration or his process or like how he did something, just unmute yourself and ask, or just chat it in the old chat. And
Cool.
we can always, come talk about it. It looks like Jeremy just heard about it on Shiny Object Social Club just a few minutes before the hour. That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yes. That's Tom Osmond's community, by the way. It's a Discord community and it's amazing. So if you're not in it, you should be. But yeah, so I'll kind of take you through what I'm building. So I started out by kind of building like the steps of the workflow. This app to me is all about the user experience. Like I'm not bringing any unique technology that nobody's seen before. The differentiation of my product's not really in my data or anything like that. It's literally in the user experience. It's in the way you manage your calendar. It's a calendar workflow. So I'm starting by building out the steps of the flow and spending a lot of time on the user interaction part of it. So I've got kind of 6 main steps to kind of the initial user onboarding. So that's really what I'm building here, is like your first tutorial or your onboarding when you get into the app. And the main concept of this calendar workflow is your stream. So this is an example of a stream. A stream is a day, but it's broken up into your unique segments. And so right here, I've got 3 example segments. There's daily prep emails, high energy meetings, and then deep work projects. The way that I've designed this is you can add segments to your stream. So you can add a segment on the beginning or the end of your stream, and then you can also add a segment in the middle. And if you move your mouse just between one of these segments, it'll give you an option to add one there. I've also set up the ability to modify each of the segments. So if I want to make these segments longer or shorter, I can just click the plus button or the minus and change the size of these segments. Ignore this total time up here, by the way, there's a little bug with it where it's off by half an hour. And I know what it is, I just haven't fixed it yet. But at certain times it ends up off. But yeah, you modify these different segments to kind of say, okay, this is how I want my day to be structured. And the idea is you'll be able to build as many of these as you want. So maybe weekdays you have set up a certain way. Maybe it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you have a certain cadence to your day, and Tuesday, Thursdays are different. I'm kind of leaving that open to the user. So you can add segments to these. So I've just got this modal for the moment that has different segment types, and I'll kind of get into those in a minute. But you can add one of these on, and then as I mentioned, you can change the size. I'm trying to limit the amount of like UI, like contextual UI that I have to have. So I'm trying to limit the amount of like menus and pointers and all that stuff. So we'll see how this actually works as people start using it and giving me feedback. But for example, to delete, you just keep reducing the time until it's a 30-minute segment, which is the lowest you can go. They're in 30-minute blocks, and then it pops up a delete option, and you can just delete it like that. So playing around with some concepts like that. You can also move the segments using these arrows. I have a couple of bugs that pop up here sometimes when moving these around, but it looks like it's actually working right now. So that's pretty cool. But you can change the order of these as well. And that's kind of that. So I'll talk about, I'll kind of move through the steps, and then I'll talk about some of the other stuff I built from the admin side. So the idea is the next step, you would connect your calendar. I don't actually have this hooked up yet, so it doesn't do anything, but I'm going to be starting with Google Calendar first because that's the most common. And then obviously I'll want to work my way through other integrations. But you connect your calendar, it's going to import your list of events, and then you will tag them by different criteria. So this would be the third step. This is actually pulling in some events from my Google Calendar. It'll show you the event. It'll show you whether it's recurring or not. If it's a recurring meeting or a one-time. It shows you how many people there are in the meeting, how many people are on the attendees list. And then if there's a link to Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever it is, it will show you that as well. They'll give you the description for the meeting, and then I'm intentionally not showing you like what day and time this meeting is, because I want to, I kind of want to remove that part of the thinking right now. It's literally about what type of meeting is this? What does this, how does this fit into your stream?
Oh.
So for me, I would look at this and I would say, okay, it's a product team stand up, 6 people. I know it's on Zoom. I got to be on video. Got to be, smiling and, high energy, like it's a stand up, I don't want to be the party pooper. So I would tag this high energy meetings, for example. And then you can choose an icon for this. This is something that maybe, I don't know how common this is, but with the flow that I have set up, I'll go back to my homepage just to give you an example, but I like to see at a glance, like what type of meeting is this? Is it video? Is it audio only? Can I be on mute most of the meeting? There's some meetings where you're just listening. It could be a webinar or whatever. So can I just be on mute? Do I have to share my screen? And so that's why I created these different icons that you can tag them with. I think I'll enjoy that at a glance, just being able to see, okay, this is a video meeting. So you'll choose the icons. I'll probably have a lot more and allow people to customize them, but this is what I'm starting with. And then once you tag these meetings, it will then take your meetings and overlay them on top of your stream and show you what I'm calling blockers, but like it'll show you exceptions to say, okay, you tag this meeting as a high energy meeting, but your stream says you want your high energy meetings to be 9 to noon. So you've got this exception sitting out here, and it's like it even disjoints the stream to show you it's no longer a nice flow to your day. You've got this exception out here, and then you kind of have to decide what you want to do with it. So if I click on this exception, I'll get a window like this that's really showing you, okay, this is outside of your segment, and it's prompting you to take action on it. So one of the things I've said is I want to normalize like some of the calendar behaviors that they're an option and they're there, but at least in my experience and in my circles, people don't really use them, or you feel bad if you do, or they seem taboo or whatever. And I want to kind of take some of that anxiety out of it. And so I'm giving you kind of upfront 3 main options, like propose a new time, decline the invite, or set your response to tentative. And then you can do nothing if you want to, but the idea is you want to kind of get the user to try and get their meetings into the stream that they're wanting to build. And so this is as far as I've gotten with this flow, but I'm playing with ideas of doing some different things, like maybe suggesting, if they decide they want to change the time or decline the invite, maybe giving them like some suggested text that can go in the response. That's like, taking, again, a little bit of the anxiety out of it, but like socially acceptable responses that the other person would understand, like, okay, this happens to everybody. They want to move the meeting. Anyway, that's kind of what I'm thinking there.
Is anyone else
So,
an introvert here? Because is this not just like awesome? Awesome. Go ahead, Bill. Michael.
yeah. So no, this is good. I'm glad to hear your feedback. So then you'll go through your exceptions, and then I have another concept, which is adding what I'm calling pebbles to your, they're not really to your day, you're just adding them to your stream. And the concept of pebbles are these 3, right now I have 3 of them, these gray icons at the bottom, but it's like, these are things that you want to get done. They're tasks that you need to complete at some time, or something you need to do, but you don't have to do them at a specific time. At least the way that I use my calendar today, I'll show you, I'll just hover over these so you can see a few examples, but like text Ryan, schedule my live stream, call mom. Like I used to put these kinds of things on the calendar because like aspirationally, I'm like, oh yeah, tomorrow I'm gonna call mom like at noon. And then I get to tomorrow, it gets to 11:30 and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm up for that right now. Like, I'm busy or I'm in the middle of something. And so what ends up happening is I continue to move it around my calendar, delay it. And at least for me, that just like, it just adds mental weight and I feel unproductive, those kinds of things. So I want to have tasks that can sit down here that I can complete at any time, and I'll feel great once I check them off, but I don't feel like I'm missing them. So they'll be down here and they'll just continue to roll over each day. They'll roll over to the next day until you actually complete them. So that's the concept for these. And I'm kind of going to develop that idea a little bit more. But this is what your finished stream would look like, assuming you get all of your meetings into the right buckets that you want. You'll have a day that looks something like this. And you can see your open time with no meetings, and then anywhere where you do have a meeting or a scheduled event, you'll see the icon for it, what, how long it is, and those kinds of things. So that's the finished concept. And then the last piece that I'm working on in terms of the initial flow is the ability to share just a segment of your calendar. So instead of sending out a link and saying, here's the link to my calendar, like book a time, and it gives all the times that you don't have something scheduled, this would only send a link to that one segment of your day, and it would still show, only available time slots, but it's a way to share just that type. So if you know the purpose and the reason that you're sharing out your calendar link, you can share just a specific segment that fits into. And so you can create a public link that's just always operational. And then I'm also going to have an option to create like a one-time, like self-destructing, this link will self-destruct after a certain amount of time or after one use. So that way, again, you're not just leaving your calendar out there and people are booking it and then you feel bad because you didn't really want to just have a unprompted meeting. So that's the concept behind that one time. I'll pause there, I guess, and ask, are there any questions before I kind of talk about the back end?
Yeah.
Cool.
Everybody digs that feature.
Cool. All right. So my idea too is that these segments of time, they're going to be customizable. I want the user to be able to create their own segments, call them whatever they want. Again, for some people, it may be based off of time, or some people, who have multiple gigs, they may segment their day by the different gigs that they have. I really see no limit to the way people may want to structure their streams. And so I want to make all that easy for them to do. I haven't started working on like the user's view of creating their own segments, but for my purposes, I did build a quick like admin view. So I've just got this quick and dirty like admin setup where I can add different segment types. And I can also see specific segments that are on the calendar. I can even set up the colors that are available, because that's one thing I am going to have defined is like a set color palette. I want the app to be very visually pleasing. And so I think I want to define what the palette is and then let people pick from those colors versus just letting them enter any color. And then, it might not work with the text colors that you have on the page or things like that. But I can add colors here. So if I say like I want to add a dark blue, what I would do, I'll start with this blue that I have and just make it darker. So if I like that, I'll add that as a dark blue option. And now when I go to create a segment type, let's say I want to call this, I don't know, exercise or whatever. I have this color palette picker, and it just added this dark blue that I just created. And now I can add that as a segment type. So I'll have a view similar to this for the user where they can, create their segment types and decide. There'll be a much larger list of color options here, but they can decide what color they want each of their segment types to be, and they'll create their own segments. So I'll have something like that. And that's really it right now. This admin section is really just for me managing as I'm building out the app, like being able to see really into the database and be able to see like if there's any issues. For example, if I go to my segments view, I have a field here that's actually for the amount of time. This is in minutes, how long these segments are, this column here. So I can make sure that what I'm seeing visually on the page kind of matches what's in the database. And I even set this up to move in 30-minute increments to match my, how my app works, minimum of 30, so you can't go lower than that. But again, this is just for me right now, but I created that little admin view so that I can control what's going on. Should I jump into the studio and kind of show how I have it laid out?
Yeah, I think that'd be awesome. And if anyone has like I'm curious how you did the 30-minute increment thing. So if anyone saw something cool, or like how you designed them to expand and shrink depending on if you add more time, or like that stuff is really cool. So I'm sure everyone wants to know how did you do that?
Sure. I'll show that. So so this is my studio view. These are all the pages that I have right now. Most of these are in use. There's a few that are old and I'm just saving them for reference, but I'll show you how I did that. So that is in the admin view here, and it is this view, the segments. Let me zoom in a little bit more. All right, so it's actually this field here, which is a number input field. And this is one where I almost hit up Drew or Mark to say like, how do I do this? But then I thought, no, Michael, you could figure this out. Like you could do it. I looked at the element types. Let me go in here. And I was looking at the input field, and I noticed that there's different types on this input. There's like, it supports number, it's input mode. That's what I was looking at. So I noticed that it supports numeric, search, email, all these different methods. And on the numeric one, I just looked up the HTML attribute for the number input type. And I noticed that there's a min and a max that you could set. And then there's a attribute called step, which is what controls the increment when you click up or down. And so I thought, you know what, I bet you I can just add this in Bildr, because Bildr lets me do whatever I want. And I created these as arguments. I just called them step, min, and max. And this is actually the name of the attribute that belongs to that HTML tag. If you just Google search HTML number input, you'll see that this is an option. So I created that. I set it to be a number, and the default is 1. And I told it that it's a HTML attribute. And then it popped up in Bildr. So in the studio, I could see that this field was there. And then I just had to control the increment for it. And in order to do that, I did, where did I go? I gotta remember where I did that. Hang on. I think it was in the function.
Maybe in the JSON? How did you do it? I'm actually curious which way you went with it. Because you could do it in a couple of ways.
I remember it's render HTML element. Was it in here? No, I didn't edit the JavaScript. I'm trying to remember where I did this now.
Go back to the element type.
Yeah. Input.
And then click on the JSON tab. Did you do it in there? Because you have access to all the arguments in here.
I did not.
No.
Wait, what are you trying to find? Because that should work. What you just showed is all you need to have that step in there.
The step works, but I set it to only work in 30-minute increments. And I want to show how I did the increments of 30. Actually, you're right.
Oh, you
Drew.
did it in the,
That's it.
You just set that
right.
value, right? The value you just created, you set it to 30, I think. Yeah.
You're exactly right. That's all it is. So I set the step value to 30, which means every time you click, it increases by 30. And then I set the minimum to 30 minutes. I set the max to 24 hours, and that's actually not what I want to do. So ignore this, because you could have multiple segments at 24 hours and it'd be a mess. I want the whole stream to max out at 24, but ignore that. So yeah.
Quick, Michael. So I just want to highlight. So you went into the element types, you found the element,
Yes.
you added some additional arguments to it, and then those arguments now appear here when you are when you have selected that element, and then this is where you're setting the values for those.
Yes, that's
Okay,
right. The only thing I didn't
You're in the
figure out.
properties view. So yeah, if you guys adjust or add arguments to elements, then when you have that element on a page, you'll see those in the properties tab, and then you can adjust. Okay, cool. All right,
Yeah.
carry on, Michael.
No, that's good. And the only thing I didn't do yet, which would be ideal, is I would like for step, min, and max that I added to only show up when the input type is set to a number. Right now, if you change it to any other input type, these fields are still here because I did it, on the element type. But
You can do that.
ideally,
Easier than you think. Yeah.
Yeah,
do it very
in the
fast.
argument, there's actually like at the very bottom, you can actually say only show this when it matches that, or don't show it when it matches that.
Or couldn't he just duplicate that element and then just make like your own element for just that thing?
for just the number.
Yeah,
And then-
but
do it
this
that
is
way,
better,
too.
I think. If you just click on step and have it only show if it's number, then you're done. That's pretty clean. See at the bottom there?
Hide from
Change
instances.
the parent argument. It's hidden in here. So make it the tag name is the parent argument.
Okay.
And then that should Oh, no, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm mistaken. That's only on action arguments that we do that. You're right.
Gotcha.
There's no way to do it on the element arguments. Yep,
Gotcha.
my bad.
What are y'all doing? I can write it up real quick so we can.
Yeah. In the action arguments, you can define the parent argument, and then you can specify that to only show that child when the parent has a certain value or doesn't have a value or has any value. And then that would basically make it, depending on which number, text, or whatever he selects, the user selects, it would then just show the arguments that pertain to that one type.
That'd
Okay.
be cool.
So yeah, I can add that into our task list. But wouldn't my thing work if it really mattered that much? You could just duplicate the text element and then just rename it to be like whatever that specific thing is, and then only add your arguments there and go kill them off the original. Okay. Not, you don't have to do that, but I just wanted to see if there was a way to work around it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
Okay,
sense.
cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I did that. Other questions on how I set this up? It's pretty straightforward.
I want to see the data setup you have. Like
Sure.
which thing is which data, you know, like what collection to what
Sure.
piece, right?
Yeah, so so I have segment types, which that's this table right here, or sorry, this table right here. So these are basically the options that you have for your segments of time. And so that's segment types. I really just have a color and a name, and that's it. And this color is actually a link to the colors table. So the colors each have a hex color and a name, and that is this table right here. So it's just a reference to that table. And then I have events, which these are your actual like calendar events. And I only have a few fields on here so far. I've got the attendees, which is an array, description, and the name of the event, which is like the title, and then whether it's recurring or not, and then which segment type it's assigned to. So that's what I have right now for the events. And that's it. Yeah. I have a lot more.
How do those apply on where you were clicking, you know, add time?
Mhm.
Like how do you do that in there? How's that working? Where you like add
So-
30 minutes or subtract 30 minutes?
Yeah, it's actually saving as soon as I do it. You're talking about here or in the admin
Yeah.
view?
Yeah,
Okay.
in here.
So right now, this is not the way I want to do it long term, but I kind of built it out this way so I could start to prove it out. But right now, it's adding that and saving it automatically, like right at the time that you click it. Because this stream that I'm building, it can only be viewed by me right now. And so it's really in a draft state until I actually publish it. So each time I click, it's just setting the increment.
So you're
I
like
could show
taking that and doing a math of plus 30 or something? Plus 30 minutes?
Yes. Yeah, let me show you that.
Slow.
Sure. So it's decreased length. So it's just setting, I have a variable for length, which is the current length of the segment. And so when I click basically the minus, it just updates this length field in the database to be its current value minus 30. So that's this table here, or actually, that's in the segments table. So this field length, which is just a number of minutes, it's just subtracting 30 from it, and my increase is just adding 30.
Gotcha. So
And then
you've
I
got
have
the segment record that's being updated with the new number of minutes. Gotcha.
That's
awesome.
right. And I have some like user controls that basically say if the segment's already 30 minutes, you can't decrease it. You know, if it's already over a certain length, you can't increase it. But that's really applied like when you click before it gets to this function.
Yes, Kevin, you just type the name.
Cool.
What's that?
Thank you. I was wondering about, I didn't know you could access variable names in square brackets like you have with length there.
Yes, it's actually pretty nice. If you type the open bracket, then you'll get this drop down of elements, and then you can toggle to variables. There's an edge case where the variables aren't showing on the list, but if you type it in and hit save, it adds it like that. So I
Cool,
did that
thank
and then
you.
just did plus 30. Yep.
Also, Dorian, I wrote that bug up for you yesterday, where it's not showing the variable names.
Yeah, so so that's what I have so far. I've got some challenges that I'm anticipating coming up with time zones. Time zones are always a headache. Daylight savings time, like all that's going to be a headache. It always is, you know, anytime you're working with time. So I'm anticipating that, but I'm avoiding it right now because I just want to focus on, like I said, building the user experience. So that's why none of these actually say like, what time does this stream start? Or, you know, is this 9 to 12? I'm just kind of printing this out for myself as I'm building it so I can see how long these segments are, and I'll worry about the actual time part of it later.
How are you going to go about connecting the Google Calendar? Do you have like I know you said that you haven't built it out yet.
Yeah.
But like, you don't have to do everything right now, but like, how would you kind of think about going about it with the API stuff?
So there's a Google Calendar API, and then there's also the connect to Google like buttons, you know, like if you do sign in with Google or those kinds of things. And so I'm planning to do this, use the sign in with Google button to authenticate them to their account. And then once they're authenticated, I can use the calendar API to pull in their calendar events. The way that I'm thinking about doing it is I'll probably pull like the first week's or the next week's worth of events, at least during the onboarding flow, and just have them like tag their events for the week. And then after that, I'll probably pull a lot more and just have like a queue for them to go through on any exceptions that they have to, any blockers that they have to tag. And then this view, I actually want to be like a carousel. So you can flip through your different events in order to tag them. So like I'll have left and right arrows and you just cycle through.
And Michael, that API call. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry,
go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I was gonna say, how do you go about styling? Did you do it through CSS or did you use the visual tools for it?
That's a good question. So mostly I used the visual tools. So I kind of built it all out first in this flow. This one is not connected to anything, or I should say this page. It's not connected to anything. There's nothing dynamic about it. These are all just divs that I've styled. So I kind of broke them up into these segments. So I've got, let me close Pebble. So I got 5 segments here, which represent the 5 colors. And then in each one, I have what I call a stretch. It's just like a stretch of time. And I'm just using the utility style classes. So I have one class that is universal to all these stretches of time. So this one really sets the layout. There's some spacing on it, which is just the padding. This sets the height, because I want all of these to be 100 pixels high. And then the rounding of the ends, you know, so I set the radius to 50, so these are rounded. And then,
how are you
because again,
making it bigger? Is it like on auto or something for the width?
So the I can show you on the actual child page, which is right here. So it's the width on this one, actually, sorry. No, not this one, the segment. I think. No.
Maybe
It
on the
wasn't a
whole
change
hour.
you made to like the style class of the div to the main primary class, like you did it all with appending classes.
Yeah. Well, there's one that sets the height for all of them, and then the individual ones have their own width. I'm trying to find where I actually set the width to it, but it's dynamic. It's pulled from the database. It pulls that linked field, and then it does a little bit of math, because the way that I have it set is basically every minute is a certain like percentage width. And so it does a calculation. It kind of takes the length, multiplies it by 2 or something, and that ends up being the width of it. I just can't find exactly where I did it right now.
Did you set it in action, like completely? Because it probably has to be, right, to be dynamic.
Yeah, when it loads, so there's a, you guys are going to see my messy work here. I need to rename a lot of these things. There's this element set segment width, and this is what's actually setting it. There's a variable that it's pulling from. So here you go. Here's my math. Length times 2 plus 40. The 40 is basically a padding that makes sure that I have a minimum size even for a 30-minute event. And so multiplies it by 2, adds 40 pixels kind of for each side, and then down here it's actually setting that width using that variable.
So it sounds like what Michael is doing is he's using flows and different actions in the flow that can control the styling of elements when certain things happen. So
Right.
he's not doing it directly with the styling, but he's using actions. So you can use actions to do that as well.
Yeah.
Michael, that's really interesting. I like, this is kind of how I think about it too, is I'll go with base. I like what you did there, where you made this base page that's not dynamic. Like, don't overthink the rest of it. First, just get the style looking the way you want. And if you use style classes appropriately, then you're just reusing them when you make the dynamic page. That's a really good point, because I actually do that, but I don't know if I've ever said that out loud. That's what I do, because I want to see it first, like I want to see what it's going to look like without having to like go into all the data structure and all the other things. So it's really interesting. I like it.
So is this like what you consider a design system, Michael?
Yes. And I normally don't build this way. Normally what I would do is I would, build out the database, like design the data structure the way I want. And then I would connect the UI and start pulling in the data. And it would just be like a list of raw text that doesn't look like anything. And then I would start styling each element. But this whole like concept started with this visual that I had about how these streams would look. And so I just had to start there. So I built all this out, laid it all out. None of it's dynamic. And then I sort of reverse engineered it and said, okay, how would I pull the color from the database? How would I pull the width from the database? How do I get the name, that kind of stuff? And I actually love building it this way. I'll probably not go back to the other way after having done it in this order. It works for my brain.
Yeah.
Michael, I think Dan asked a question. He said, how long did it take to build this? And how long do you think it would take a beginner to build this?
So I did all the layouts, like all the designs in probably, I don't know, maybe 8 hours in total. I kind of had laid out all of this, just like I said, not connected to anything dynamic, just using divs and CSS styles. Probably 8 hours to do all the layout. And then I've spent now a couple days on connecting everything up and adding the functionality. So I would say that's probably pretty standard. I mean, I'm fairly new to Bildr, so I don't think I had any advantage or head start there necessarily, and it's been pretty easy. It's only been a couple days since then.
I do want to, I think this like kind of leads into a good conversation. I actually had a really good conversation with someone on Twitter about how beginner might be a little bit different depending on what your background is. So like you might be a beginner in Bildr, but it seems like having had a development background has enabled you to do a lot of things or just kind of pick up on stuff a lot easier in the tool. Would you say that's pretty accurate?
I think so. I think that if you have experience or if you just go and research like HTML and CSS, you'll be able to kind of go wild in Bildr because that's really like if you can kind of figure out, okay, I know how I want to lay this out with CSS, and then you can know things like, oh, I looked up the HTML tag for a number input and I should be able to control 30-minute increments. Like there's an intuitive way in Bildr to do it. So having that familiarity definitely helps, I would say. But beyond that, yeah, I'm not really solving any technical challenges or doing anything crazy yet. I may get to that point if I, come up with something crazy. But right now, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Awesome. Does anyone have other questions for Michael? Please feel free to check them or...
Sure. So everything's like built in different pages. Did you connect it to one full page? So like have or how'd you go, or why'd you do this decision for styling?
So I wanted to have this kind of flow. Again, this is really, this isn't how it's going to end up being or looking, but I'm talking about with the menu at the top. But I wanted to work in this way. Like I want to know what are the main 6 steps that I want the user to take. And I don't know if this is the Bildr approved way to do it, but I created a page that is my header. And then on each of these pages, I have this div here called header, and it's empty. There's nothing in it, but it just has this empty div called header. And then I have a flow, or on the page load, I say open page into container. And I told it I want to open the header page into my div named div header. And that's how it's doing it. I don't know if that's the right way to do it, but it worked. So I rolled with it.
There is a component element that just does that for you. So instead of dropping a div, drop that component element right next to the div. And it lets you select the page you want to, you don't have to use an action.
Gotcha. Okay, there you go. So
but this method is good. This is how I work too, where like I do usually have something that looks more like a page. Like nothing here looks like the page. I think that's what you're getting at. But right. I basically break everything out into sections and then use components, because you can run actions across pages. You can access variables across pages. So it actually makes things like super reusable if you want to use them somewhere else. So this is how I would build this kind of style.
Yeah.
So if you had a traditional like header across the top, maybe a menu down the side, the header and the menu would each be containers.
Yeah.
And I guess the middle piece too would be a container, and you'd load pages into that.
Yeah, and I don't always keep that mid part, and like, so it's not just like a blank page with 3 containers. Usually I'll have like a container for header, a container for footer, some custom stuff, and then anything that's reusable or like that is a component will be its own page loaded into a component.
Gotcha.
So it sounds like we've got 2 different ways that it sounds like we're talking about page structure. One of them is like you have the page, and then what Michael is doing is he's using flows and specifically the open page in a container action to then call other pages to open within that one page. And then Drew has another method as well, where he just creates a page for whatever that thing is, like the header or the footer, and he makes a component out of it. He uses that element on a page to then point to and say, hey, show me this other header or this, footer, etc. So Jeremy's like, so this is like a single page app.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing is, in Bildr, you have a page that you set with a route. So you create a route a URL route and you point it to a specific page. That's kind of like your main single page app page. But then within that, you're opening other pages inside of that page, depending on what you're doing. So like for instance, whenever I'm building, all of my menus end up being their own little page. And the reason is that I want to, like, when I come back to that thing 3 months later, if I had embedded all my menus inside of other pages and like default them all to hidden or something, then I've got to go figure out where did I have that? What was I doing? And
Gotcha.
also it makes it where you end up with like a monolithic page with, 6,000 actions on it, or 6,000 flows and, all your elements in there. So I try to break it up just like you did here, where you have all these different component level pages. And I think the further you get into Bildr, like the more you end up creating more and more component-based architecture for the app, because it just makes it so much easier to maintain over time.
Yeah, and one of the things that I should show this real quick that you helped me with, Mark. At least this is my interpretation of how you recommended I do it. So if this is not what you meant, forgive me. But I wanted to have a, where is it? It's on segment types. Like I mentioned, I'm going to end up using this on the front end for the user side, but I wanted a custom color picker because I didn't want them to just use the standard color picker and be able to pick any color in the rainbow. So I wanted to build.
Anyone to make his app look ugly.
I wasn't going to say it, but yes.
Nice, Michael.
I didn't want to see screenshots out there like, oh my gosh, they used, mustard yellow with whatever. So I wanted to create this custom color picker, and the way I interpreted, Mark's suggestion on it was I have this, let me zoom in here. I have this page, which is a picker for the segment type. It's really just a div that has the little gray rounded box that I want. And then it has a list inside. And then the child for each of those is this page next to it, which is really just a rounded div, and it has a color loaded into it. And basically this page loads inside of this list, and all of this is in a hidden div that's, where is it? It's not that one. This one, div dropdown. I just have like an empty div here underneath the little icon. And when you click this, it loads the whole list of colors into this div here and just shows it. So I just kind of nested each of these pages so that I could have my custom little color picker. But
Yeah,
that method seems to work well.
That's exactly how I would do that. Like I have my color picker menu that I just built out. And Michael, you just described exactly why to do it too, right? You're using it in this one context, and then later you're going to have another context.
Yeah.
The user view of that. You want the same menu. Now you're not having to build the same thing 2 or 3 times for future use. It's a really smart way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to have to come back here and have to change things in 3 different places when I change how something works. So that method's been really helpful.
I had a quick
Any other
question.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm trying to figure out right now on my second day of using it is what tools do I have as a builder to try to inspect and see what's going wrong? So like you said, you had that bug where you have, you were calculating the math of your whole stream, right? Like 9.5 or 9 hours total.
Yeah.
How did you go about that?
So Mark, do you want to answer how I should go about it, or do you want me to answer how I did it?
No, I'm curious. Go.
Okay.
I'm just joking. Yeah, no, I'll step in too and help out with that after you share this.
Okay. So the first thing that I do, and I've done this like my whole career. It's just the way my brain works. But when I'm building, I put as much stuff on the page as I can. So like for each of these segments, I'm saying, show me in the UI, like how many hours long is this segment, or how many hours long do you think you are? And then I'm doing something similar up here. I even, when I was building this, like instead of having the name of the segment, I was trying to figure out the order. And so this one said first, second, third, like I was having them actually print out what order are you? Are you the last segment? Are you not? That helps me a lot with debugging when I'm looking at, you know, the page itself and trying to build things out. But the other way that I use most often is I just right click and I do inspect. And here in Chrome, like I can figure out so much about what's happening if I just do that right click and inspect. I can look and see, you know, why my divs aren't working. Like, okay, this one's hidden right now. So I can see that, you know, if I change this to visible, it pops up. And, you know, as you click on things, like if I make a change here, even when I mouse over, you can see it changing the style. It's showing visibility hidden, and then it's going away. Like there's so much here that tells you what's going on in the inspector panel. This really helps me a lot with those types of bugs. I haven't found a great way yet to necessarily debug like database bugs or data issues, but I'm sure Drew or Mark probably has some suggestions there. I just haven't played around with the data too much yet.
Yeah, and just so you know, we're working on an actual debugger that will just let you stop basically creating breakpoints in the queue. So
Nice.
for the programmers in the room, I'll kind of explain how Bildr functions, and then it'll kind of help you to understand what it's doing. So when the user triggers an event, say they click on something on the page and you have the click event running some action or some flow with a set of actions in it. What's actually happening there is that event sends to our core JavaScript queue this list of things that need to happen inside of that. And that queue already has the ability through JavaScript, you can actually like stop and start the queue and pause it and get details out of like what's running and what's in the queue still to come. All that stuff is already accessible. So we need to put a UI around all that and make it an actual debugger. I won't go through it in this, but if you're curious, I can actually show you pretty easily, if you're a programmer, where exactly to go in that queue JavaScript and just put a breakpoint in. Here's the syntax, copy and paste the action ID. Michael, if you go to a flow and just go into an action and hit the little 3 dots menu on that action right there. Yeah, right there. So see, there's an action ID and an action type ID.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Drew, we should do like a community post that just shows how to do this.
That's what I was thinking.
But basically, if you copy that action ID and you go to this specific spot in the JavaScript and you just put that in, it will stop on that, and you can see all the input arguments, what it just did, what all the variables are on the page. Like you can see everything. So that way you can stop it there. And there will be a visual way to do this soon. It's something we have to do all the time. As you get a complex build going, you just inevitably have to debug it. It's just part of it, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting. I was doing manual things like, you know, for example, I'm setting variables to tell me how many segments there are in the entire stream so that I know what my total number of segments are. And then for each segment, I'm setting another variable that tells me what's the number of the segment. And I wanted to use like natural numbering. So I took index +1 because first one is actually index 0, but I wanted to see them as 1, 2, 3. So I would set these variables and then I would just tell these fields to load that variable. So instead of the name, I would tell it load segment number. And then I could go into this view and I could see 1, 2, 3. And then as I click to change the order of these and I'm sorting them, I can see, oh, okay, they're sorting out of order, or, you know, I can kind of start to eliminate by process of elimination where my bugs are. So that's just something that I do that's really helpful, but I
do that too.
That's great.
I do that exact thing, but there's also like, I'll do it like Mark said, I'll do a community post for that breakpoint stuff. And there's like a way you can actually in the console check what variables you have on the page and what they're set to. And then you can actually like, you know, pages inside of pages, you can dial into those and see the variables. So you can do it. But I actually often do exactly what Michael just showed. And what I'll do is I'll put just like a small tip. If I make an action that updates one of those for like a debug purpose, I just in the action name write debug in all caps at the end. So then it's really easy. Later, I have all these debug actions. I can just go remove them. But like I do that a
Nice.
lot. Like I mean, it's a part of my process for sure.
Dorian and I
good.
also in like the bigger builds we've done in the past, and in Bildr itself, we do this where like I'll create a debug page inside of there, and it literally just I do all that and I leave it there for my whole build,
Mm.
you know, and then I just go remove the page because then I can
Mm.
see everything that I want to see. And honestly, that's all just supplementing, or you know, it's the crutch that I have to do because we don't have the debugger in there yet. So that debugger needs to come, because as soon as you get really complex in these builds, you really have to start doing this stuff to go back through, especially if it's been a couple of weeks, you know, you're like,
Yeah.
you're working on something else, you come back, you just need to see it easily. But those are really good ways to do it. And we'll add a community post to show you a little more detail on how to do it.
That's cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. See you, Jeremy. So it does look like we are just at a little over an hour. So I don't know if anyone needs to go. We do have time where we could hang around. And Michael, actually, what time do you need to head out?
I'm good till 1 or 12:30 your time.
Okay, so we've got, if anyone has like a few more questions, you know, we can ask them or hang around and chat. I did want Mark to maybe give a little update about what we're working on and what you guys can expect in the next update. So yeah, I guess we can just do like a little bit of a Q&A wrap up. But I do want to say, Michael, like I'm so excited. It's really cool to see inside your process of like how you actually work, how you started. I would have not known that you actually start by doing all the data stuff and the complex stuff first and then do the design. Like the design is so beautiful already, just like on a few days of having done it. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. So it's cool to learn kind of like how you approach stuff and how it changes too with different projects.
Yeah, thank you. My goal is to share something kind of like what I just gave you guys a sneak peek of, which is basically like a page that has 6 steps. Here are the 6 main steps in my app, and just share that with people and say, like, what do you think? Is building a stream easy? Is it hard? Is picking your segment types, does that make sense? Before I get too far in this process, because I may have to go like change it all if I get feedback, you know what I mean, that says it's not as intuitive as I think. So I'm hoping to do that soon.
Yeah, that's always the crux is like, and it's the cool thing, I think, that like no code or low code or just visual development is been able to mitigate somewhat, is like that you don't have to, you can do some of the design and some of that and get feedback without having to go through like the whole thing and then not knowing, you know, if it's gonna like hit or not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So Kevin, it does look like you might have a question that we can check
I
out.
can answer.
Oh, you're okay. Cool. Yeah.
Question just about SEO, but it's like you can do everything you need, but the UIs are coming like some other sections.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and Kevin, if you want to go into detail on that, we can walk you through how to do it. But you basically in the page headers and in URL routes, you can reference the data itself. That's whatever's tied to the relevant thing that you're doing, right? So if you've got like I'll just use the normal blog example, right? So if the page, it's all client side rendered, but we can bring all that data with it in the page header to the page. So like if you're having meta tags, it can just pull that data with it. So it's all good for SEO. And so far in our experience, that's been enough. Drew is way more versed in it than I am, and he's made like all of our community posts and all that stuff is SEO friendly. You know, creates it. He actually made it go. It actually generates a banner bearer image. Uses banner bearer to generate an image of the post itself with the name, and then uses that as the meta image. So you can do pretty much whatever you want in there. It's pretty cool.
That's really cool. Does that also include like can I do the same thing with third-party data, like third-party APIs, or?
No, because we don't run those API calls before the page is
Gotcha.
brought. It's really interesting though. I kind of.
Well, like for an example of that, on no code list, I pull in Airtable data. I just save it in the database. I have an SEO table that saves the Airtable
Oh,
record
that's
ID
smart.
and the information it needs, and then I can pull it native in Bildr.
Perfect.
You know? So there's ways to do it.
That's great.
I was
Thank
really
you.
excited for a minute there because I was like, I've never heard Mark say no ever. But then Drew just gave a workaround. So
There's rarely a hard no, you know. I mean, normally it's like no, but right here's a way, you know. It's Bildr's really similar to code in that way, you know. There's very few limitations, and when there is, it usually means you just have to add 3 steps to your process to make it do what you want it to do. But yeah, it is a rare thing that I'll be like, no, I don't think so.
You mentioned page headers, Mark. That reminded me, the icons that I'm using are from Font Awesome, and they were super easy to add into Bildr. I don't know if that's interesting to anybody, but if so, I can show how to do that. It's very quick.
Show us, Michael.
Sure.
I love
absolutely.
icons, so I'm interested.
Okay.
I like feather icons.
Yes. So Feather that's in the latest release, right, Drew?
Not quite yet. I still have like
Not yet?
one little kink to work out, but it's almost there.
Okay. So yes, Feather is one option. I love Font Awesome. There's just so many of them. There's literally 7,865 of them. And so adding this to Bildr was crazy easy. In the page headers, I just created a page header for Font Awesome, and it's this one line of code, this one script that is on their site. It's on the Font Awesome website. So you just add that, tell it to load on all the pages, and then anywhere that you have I just use a text element, but you could use, I think you can use other types as well, like a span or whatever, but I just have a text element in here, and I just put this little reference in here, which comes from the website. So if I type in microphone, you can see all the options that they have. And when you select one, it shows you right here, your little tag that you want to put in there. So you literally copy that and put it into here. So I have the one with the slash. If I take the slash off, it'll change it to the one without the slash. And you can use any other ones on their site. It's super easy. And then it works just like text. So you change the text size and it changes the size of the icon. And it's awesome, literally.
I do want to just highlight something here to be careful about, because I think Michael just reported a bug where sometimes if you change that external class reference, it might add an appending class. So just remember what you have as an appending class, because you might need to re-add that if you need to, but we'll get that fixed and rolled out.
It didn't go out yesterday? Did that go out yesterday or no? I can't remember. Dorian fixed it.
No. We fixed it, but it wasn't included in the
yet.
test release, so it's not out in production.
Yeah, you're right, Cora. It changed my icon color because it removed the utility class that was making it red. So I just put that back on, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. So just something to be careful about if you're going to use those external class references. Yeah, thank you for showing us how to do that. That was cool.
Yeah, no problem.
Page headers.
Exactly.
Okay, awesome. Let me see. Is there another question we have in the? Kevin has a question. I don't know how to answer it. Who can take it?
I'm sorry. I feel like this tool is awesome. I'm just very curious and pushing it.
This is
yeah. So I just made a tweet saying I'm only using it.
What's that, Diego?
I was saying I made a tweet right now. I made a tweet saying that I'm sponsored to Bildr and I'm only using it from now on.
Nice.
This is really it's really nice to hear this and to see like what Michael's been able to do, because as you guys know, we just opened up to everyone, and there's been some feedback that has been a little rough for me to receive, as far as like people just not understanding like what you can do with it. And so like I think it's become really clear to all of us, like, oh, we we need to like clarify and like the messaging or like explain this better so that people know. But then like when y'all come in and like you're like doing that, you know, and like as a user, I'm like seeing stuff that I didn't even know. Like, you know, because it's like it's outside of my realm of thinking. I'm like way too deep in it. I, you know, everyone else on the team probably is too. So it's like it's really awesome. It's very, very validating. And when you guys share with us like your work or, you know, but also like obviously we have a lot to learn. So for sure.
Lots to do.
Lots to learn.
I do think that Kevin's actually going to get a no here. So, but it's coming.
I wasn't going to say a no. I was going to say,
well, it's close to no. Okay, fine. Go, Drew. Go, Drew.
So if you pull in data from an API and it's like in your project on your screen or in variables or whatever, you can save it to a database just like anything else. So you could essentially create your own action to sync data into your own native Bildr data collection. And like, I feel like it would be pretty straightforward.
It won't happen in the background. That's the thing. Is
that's the one thing. It won't happen in the background. It would have to be, I mean, the way I would do that to get around the background is like run it in the background every time someone loads the page and it syncs everyone's data or something. You could get around it still. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think Michael actually asked me a week or two ago, he said, what realistically, like, what are the things that cannot be done, you know? And there's really two things that I would say you just can't do right now. One is native mobile. Like we're just focused on web apps right now. Native mobile might come later, but for now, no native mobile. The other thing is we have not exposed any APIs to the data backend of your project yet. It's coming, but we just haven't exposed them yet. And we've done it tons of times. Just so you know, Bildr is actually version 6 of our internal tools. We've been using this thing to build client projects for a really long time. Like we started the first version in 2006. And we've had to deliver for clients and we've had to build all of these things tons and tons of times. So our previous version 5 of Bildr actually has a full built API creator. Like you go in and say, I'm going to create a new API for my data. And you define a pre-filtering for it. It automatically creates tokens for you or, tokens for you. And then it actually spits out a PDF documentation of the full API with everything that's got access to. And so that'll come in there too. It'll come in Bildr as well, but just not yet. But there are usually workarounds. I think Drew actually does what he just described in a project somewhere where he like goes and grabs the data when somebody comes in, but he only gets what he needs, you know, like check, is there anything new? Okay, cool. Grab it, put it in the database, you know.
Very cool. Thank you.
Awesome. So Mark, do you want to tell us a little bit about what we're working on right now? And
and I'll keep it short for everybody. So we just did a production release last week and then basically opened it up, just letting people sign in or sign up and come in and start using it. And this week we did a production release with just a bunch of little bug fixes that came out of that. You know, people reporting stuff to us. There's maybe 10 or 20 things. The next release will be, I'm hoping to get it out this month, might be early next month. This one's going to be focused on performance internationally. That's kind of like the one Achilles heel we have right now is that international performance is still dealing with latency of some things needing to come to the US. And so what happens is like, you know, they do a request from, you know, Turkey or from wherever they're at, and some of the parts of that request have to come to the US and bounce back over. And so that's what's causing the latency back and forth. So our big focus is on getting that going. And then we're also going to be rolling out a new website to address what Cora was describing, which is, you know, what is Bildr for? Who's it for? What can you do with it? All that. So just getting better branding out there. And then tons of small things throughout the studio based on feedback. So this is little things like, you know, adding icons where there weren't icons or changing up, you know, some of it's little like spacing and things like that. Some of it's bigger, how you access certain parts of the studio, how those things open up, things like that. Those are just continuous improvements. So you'll see some of that too. What did I miss, Cora? Anything else?
We need to get more content, more educational content.
Yes. And luckily, well, those are outside of the release cycles now. That was one of the big things we did in this last setup is we built the in-studio lessons environment, and we built this a way for me and Drew and Dorian to add new elements, new page templates, new blocks into the UI without having to do any releasing. So now if somebody gets something and we want to add that to just a default that anyone can use, we just plug it in and now it's automatically in everyone's projects as something they can use. So that's going to allow us to accelerate how much it looks like we're getting out to production. It'll accelerate that because now we can pepper in things every couple of days, new lessons, new content, new things. And then the big releases once a month or so.
Yeah. It's, I was really inspired by seeing Michael work today, and it makes me be like, I want to know what we need to put in place, as far as lessons or tutorials to get people to be able to know how to work like Michael does and how to build something like that. You know what I mean? That's a really good North Star for me. I'm it's awesome that you can go in there and how to do all this stuff, but I would love to empower more people who maybe don't have the dev background or that to be able to get to a level where they can build a lot more complex things than they were able to do before. So that'll be a good guide for sure.
I would throw in there too that is one of our overarching goals, is to make people become programmers and developers and they don't know it. That's the goal, and there's so many UX challenges to that, right? You're basically, not tricking them, but you're tricking people into becoming and thinking like a programmer, even though they don't think they are. And we've had this discussion quite a bit about technical versus non-technical people. I don't actually know anyone who's not technical. Ask somebody who claims they're not technical how their cell phone works, and ask them how does the screen work? And they'll describe it to you in decent detail, and they claim they're not technical. Ask them how does the wireless internet work on their phone, and they'll describe to you there's these servers and there's all this stuff and they connect.
Wait, y'all know how that works?
Right. It's interesting though, because I've had these conversations with people who say I'm not technical, but really they are technical. It's just that there's been a lot of, as the software industry has grown, I think it just intrinsically looks way more complicated than it needs to be. And I think if we just expose it in the right way, which is really what Cora's getting at there, is how do we produce the lessons and give them to people at the right time in their journey through building in Bildr, to where we're exposing them to that information that gets them to level themselves up. And then they don't know it, but at the end of the day, 2 months later, they're actually talking like a developer. They're speaking in terms that, are actually programming terms. So that's our overarching goal, is to just get more people to be able to build using the tool, and really just using any tool, honestly. I think more people is good.
Yeah, maybe so I think you guys should roll out a bunch of how-tos, do stuff in Bildr, but then also start thinking about making content about the actual concepts and programming concepts, like database design or logic, workflow design and stuff.
Yeah.
To help you, help people really think, because I'll be a perfect, user for that, because I just don't know that stuff. I only know design, front end stuff. So I really want to learn how to do the back end and logic, so I can actually start making some web apps or software. And then also, probably not right now, but maybe start, put in the back of your head, start thinking of some cohorts that you guys can start running. Maybe you can hire someone, or Drew, or whoever, Cora, to start running some cohorts, 4 weeks cohorts, kind of start teaching people. Then I'd also start trying to look into creators or people who are kind of into the no-code scene, and then try to help, or kind of have them start making more content for Bildr, because that just helps you guys grow exponentially and stuff like that. Or Michael can run forwards. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, all good ideas and all goals that we have, for sure.
And for sure on the on the first part of that, just building out more not documentation, but blog posts is really what I'm thinking there. I actually have one drafted on structuring data, because there's pieces, there's layers to that, of just there's types of connections between different tables of data or collections of data, but there's also how to think about data in relation to building something. And that's a different mindset. It's like a different mind space you have to get into. And when you get good at both design and that, you end up doing them together. So like, sometimes I go in and do what Michael did there, and I'll put, I'll build out the whole design spec first. But then other times I'll just dive in and I'm really going back and forth. I'm like, design that. And when I hit to this point where I need a collection for that, I'll just go create the collection and bind it all up right then, and then continue down that path. So it's interesting. It changes because you can do both so efficiently in Bildr. Once you know the concepts, you end up just doing all of it at the same time. So I'm never really like, I want to go into flows and then I want to go into design and then I want to go into data. It's really more like bouncing back and forth constantly between all of those things. And I think, Dorian and Drew would probably agree that that's how they tend to flow through it once you're into a build. But yeah, so there's a lot of context that needs to be given around those programming concepts, right?
Yeah, and if there's anything you guys specifically want us to like talk more about or do, like just ask us, and then that way like we can take like, oh, this is what people actually want to learn about, and kind of move in that direction. That would also be helpful too. So let me see. Okay, guys, I think we're probably in a good spot to wrap up. So I'll post this recording in the community. If anyone wants to jump back and watch how Michael did some of his very cool stuff. But I just want to say thank you again for making this a really fruitful time. Always learn a lot. Michael, I really appreciate you taking the time to walk us through what you're working on. And it was very, very, very cool to see. And I'm excited for the app. So we'll also share the sign up for Canoe so that we can get notified when it's ready for us to use. But yeah, as always, thank you again. And I think we'll do this in another week, the week after the week after next. Okay. Awesome. See you guys. Have a wonderful weekend.
Later, everybody.
Ciao.